The Dreamer's Edge podcast was recorded in front of a microphone.
Welcome to the Dreamer's Edge podcast, episode 5.
Hi, I'm Chasm, an English editor with Deluxe Digital Studios.
And I'm Dimitri, a columnist and webmaster of thedreamersedge.com. August will be blast from the past month, so the podcast will be exploring the 80s and the 90s. And as a little prelude to that, we thought we'd take a look at all the revivals taking place today as a bridge between the past and the present. Anyway, since we feel we're mostly in a period of 80s revival as people who of our generation try to buy back their childhood because they manifestly failed at their present, we decided to concentrate only on the 80s. And we're also cutting out horror films, and that's because there's way too many of them, and we are hoping to dedicate a full episode on horror remakes. So, show and tell.
My recommendation is actually Rocky Balboa. Rocky, he comes out of retirement to face Mason the Lion Dixon. At this point, he's a little lost in his life. Adrian has passed. He has a strained relationship with his son. He's aging, and he's finding it hard. He doesn't have a lot of friends. He does run a restaurant, and that gives him something, some form of interaction.
But even that is kind of a form of his grief.
Exactly. It's really about him trying to find some sort of meaning for himself. I found this an incredibly charming story. It made me think of everything that I liked about the original Rocky film, the idea of rooting for the underdog.
The movie is full of really affecting speeches, and it doesn't try to be cynical about it, which is something that has always been characteristic of the original Rocky character in the original film, and that kind of got lost in the sequels as they tried to make the movies about Rocky's problems instead of making Rocky amuse.
Yeah, exactly. It's very straight. And yeah, that's one of the reasons why I really like this film. In a way, he really shows you how we complicate matters unnecessarily. And because he's so clear in terms of what he needs to do to get himself back on track, it really does kind of give you focus in terms of what is important to you and how you pursue your own life.
Certainly my favorite Rocky sequel, bar none.
Mm-hmm.
I think it stands in the same league as the original. I hear sometimes a lot of people who haven't seen the original Rocky but have seen the sequels kind of make fun of it as being machismo. It's not. The original Rocky is touching and moving, and it's great to see Sylvester Stallone take the franchise and bring it back in that direction.
Well, it's Stallone at his best.
Absolutely.
Doing what he knows.
My recommendation, I tried to find something a little bit as obscure as I could, because the thing with remakes is that they're usually remakes of a popular thing, and so I wanted to find something that's a remake of something you might not have heard of. And I chose a Japanese movie by director Kitano Takeshi, Zatoichi, the Blind Swordsman. It's a samurai movie. The Zatoichi series started in the 60s, and I think the last one was in 1989. So the revival in 2003 really had a chance to really completely reinvent the character. And in the tradition of great samurai movies, it's all about the corruption of feudal Japan. Yeah. He's a masseur who walks from town to town, but he used to be a samurai, and he still carries these ideals. So he comes into a small town, he meets gangs, he meets corruption, and there's two beautiful musical numbers, which is odd for a samurai movie. There's one where Zatoichi enters the town, and you see that he's happy to enter it because it's a beautiful rural town, but he can't see it, right? We see how beautiful it is, but he senses how beautiful it is because he hears the sounds around him. So the farmers like hitting the ground with their spades and walking to collect rice and all that. And all the sounds start to connect together, and as he gets closer to the town, the music becomes this big, complex symphony. And it represents completely just how he feels about rural Japan. And it's a beautiful moment. And then there's this other folkloric dance number at the end of the film that is something that I've never seen ever before in any movie. It's gorgeous, and it's just such an inventive movie. I have to say I like this revival even more than I like the original movies, of which there are 26.
Talk about sequelization. Oh, wow. But you convinced me. I'm definitely going to check that out. Okay, so the 80s franchise is making a comeback. I think you'll all be very surprised just how many are still to come. So here's a quick rundown. Magnum PI.
Tom Selleck is going to be replaced by Matthew McConaughey,
Yeah!
the laziest actor in Hollywood.
Well, this should be right up his alley then.
I'm a little bit afraid that they're going to do like a lot of revivals do and turn it into a comedy instead of doing what Magnum PI was trying to do, which is an action series.
Yeah. Well, he'll have plenty of excuses to take off his shirt, which is really all he does. So
That's true.
yeah.
He'll take off his Hawaiian shirt.
I wonder if he's going to grow the stash, though. It's part of the image.
Absolutely.
That and the ball caps. Next on our list, Tron.
I saw the early footage for Tron 2.
Mm-hmm.
It looks all kinds of awesome. My only concern is, I mean, Tron was in the early 80s. Because
Yeah.
it's such an outdated vision of computers.
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah.
And they kept that vision because they want to be consistent, and it looks absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah. What people need to remember is that computers are really just coming into people's homes. Not necessarily too many people, but, we're getting our first introduction to it. And it was opening up this whole new amazing world to us, and it seemed like anything was possible with computers.
Yeah.
Thundercats!
I don't understand why our generation is obsessed with that. It sucked.
People of our generation seem to be obsessed with every animated series, weirdly enough, that came out in the 1980s, which was nevertheless initially a toy franchise for which they created a cartoon.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's because it just became legal to do that. Reagan made it legal to do that because before that it was illegal. But I have a short story about one of the first television shows that I got a chance to work on. It never even got past the pilot phase. Anyway, this is how the interview went. I was being interviewed as a potential writer for the series, and they were explaining the concept. It was like, oh, it's going to take place underwater, and these beings are half fish. The whole concept sounded so stupid to me that I couldn't help myself saying, oh, you mean like Thundercats underwater? And I was being mildly sarcastic. I was kind of shooting myself in the foot in terms of getting a job. But here's what his reaction was. Yes, exactly! You so get it! And that's how I got the job.
Flip and see will get you everywhere.
I guess so. Moving on.
Back to school.
Cedric Entertainer replacing Rodney Dangerfield.
Mm-hmm.
Well, probably because he's dead.
Yes, that would usually.
I'm
Make a
not sure
difference.
I would have liked to see a remake. That's kind of like Weekend at Bernie's, but oh, that's a dark joke.
The Last Starfighter.
Yeah, which they're removing the last from. They're just calling it the Starfighter, probably to avoid the irony.
Conan!
Yeah.
Conan. Don't ask me why I had to say it like that.
Yeah, no. Actually, no. I will ask you why you had to say it like that.
I just felt like it needed a little bit more of a jauntiness to it.
You know what? I really want to move on now.
Red Sonja, another Robert E. Howard character.
I think Rodriguez is producing that. Isn't he?
Yeah, and it's going to have Rose McGowan as Red Sonja.
I'm not crazy about that casting, to be perfectly honest. There's something very modern about Rose McGowan.
The original movie was unintentionally funny. Yeah, and it just had like these weird problems where because of some sort of legal issue, Schwarzenegger's character couldn't be called Conan. He was called, like Calidor or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
The Karate Kid, which is actually going to be called Kung Fu Kid.
Is it in the same universe, or is it like a sequel, or is it like the new Karate Kid with Hilary Swank, for example, was a sequel,
Yeah, it's...
as was Karate
From
Kid?
what I've heard so far, it still sounds like it's in the same sort of universe.
Like, would the Karate Kid from the 80s be the Mr. Miyagi from the 2010 or whatever?
Yeah.
That would be cool. I actually would watch that.
That would be neat.
And Hilary Swank is his wife.
Moving on. RoboCop.
Yeah, Darren Aronofsky is set to be the director for that, and I think that's a great idea. Aronofsky tends to make very artsy movies where it gets out of hand, where it's just self-indulgent. But he has a great sensitivity in terms of the material and a certain depth, which is great for RoboCop, which is more of a social satire than an action film. So if he could bring that to the film and still have producers kind of rein him in so that it doesn't delve into the fountain territory, it could be the best of both worlds, really.
My only worry was that too much emphasis would be put on the technology and just focusing on that, because it's there, but that's not really what the film is about.
Mm-hmm.
Fame.
With Debbie Allen.
I know.
Yeah.
You know, Debbie Allen, she was in the original film, she was in the television series, and she's back again for the remake.
What I'd love to see is the rest of the cast being runner-ups from So You Think You Can Dance. I'd love to see that.
I've heard G.I. Joe.
Yeah, it's coming out this summer.
Yeah.
I think that's a terrible idea.
Yeah.
I'll tell you why. Transformers coming back makes sense because there's inherent poetry in giant robots beating the crap out of each other. If you don't agree, you don't have a soul. G.I. Joe are just some army dudes fighting a terrorist cell.
That's just lame. That's just going to be like every other kind of, oh, look, there's some terrorists, let's take them down with this elite fighting force.
Yes, that's exactly what I'm afraid of. They're not even dressed like the village people, because I would have liked that. Because to have...
Camp. Something.
No, it's not even for camp, it's just to have one of the few remaining openly homophobic institutions, the U.S. Army, have an elite force dressed like the village people. But I saw the trailer, they have black suits and super suits. I didn't know that, but now I know.
Oh, and knowing is half the battle. Escape from New York.
Escape from New York, what's kind of funny is that it takes place in the future, 1997. And I'm not sure you need a remake of it because the series pretty much acknowledged that this was a parallel reality and don't ask too many questions. By that I mean Escape from LA, which was taking place in the future in 97, came out in 96.
It'd be nice for them to explain more about Snake Plissken, because I found that he comes across people who are in awe of him. You hear his name, Snake Plissken. You hear about one incident that is connected to his fame/notoriety, but I didn't understand why so many people held him in awe. It was a little strange for me. I'm like, they obviously respect you, but I'm not entirely sure why. You know? So I wouldn't mind if that was a little more explained, if I had a little more of his background.
I think they might have missed the boat on it, though.
Yeah.
The original one was written in response to the Watergate scandal and then came out right in the midst of the Cold War. It was kind of all about being angry at your government. I think it was during the Reagan years.
Exactly.
And, you know, if the remake had come out during the tail end of the Bush years where even the most hardened conservative was kind of like, oh, hold on, those are not my ideals at all. What went wrong?
Yeah. It would have probably been more culturally relevant.
Exactly, but now with Obama, where there's a big feeling of hope and
optimism,
it's like, I broke my nail, I'm sure Obama can fix it.
Yeah, exactly. The dystopian kind of setup isn't going to work at the moment.
Yeah.
You're right. They probably should have done this a few years ago. Red Dawn.
Which featured Caroline in the City fighting communism. And they were called the Wolverines. And if you keep that name today, well, everybody will go like, where's Hugh Jackman? Sneak. But the second problem I have with it is called Red Dawn. Red standing for communism. That doesn't really reflect the reality anymore. So they've kind of announced that they were going to update it to current enemies of America. I'm assuming they mean terrorism. But then where does the red come in?
I don't think they thought that through. They have to either change it, they have to change it entirely. Weird science.
Why not? It led to a TV series, so obviously there's more stories to tell with that concept.
I guess we'll just have to update the sort of creation sequence part, because, you know, lightning striking your computer doesn't usually equal life, but usually...
Yeah, but I think back in the 80s they knew that as well.
That's true. Continuing on. MacGyver.
The idea of a dude who can put a couple of trombones and elastics together to hopefully find weapons of mass destruction in the Middle East, that interests me. Yeah. But I'd be interested in them getting the science right. Like, I wouldn't mind having the guys from Mythbusters as consultant for it. You know
that would be kind of fun.
Because the original series, the science never worked.
Yeah.
It was kind of like numbers. And I wouldn't mind them explaining what the heck the Phoenix Foundation was supposed to achieve.
Highlander.
Okay, alright. Can we really make a remake of Highlander? Like, is it really a revival when you consider that the last sequel, The Source, came out in 2007?
Yeah. It's a little close for comfort, don't you think? Another popular one from the 80s, Short Circuit, which is about a robot that's been created and he is struck by lightning, and he becomes, I guess, sentient is the word I'd be looking for. He becomes more aware of himself, and he's trying to tell his creator that, look, I'm more than just a tool that can be used. I actually, I guess, have feelings, I suppose.
Watch me say the same thing in 7 words. A robot gets struck by lightning and becomes alive.
Yes, there you go. Much more succinct.
Magical thunder in the movies.
I'm a little tired of robots at this point. You know. Not to be cruel to any robots out there, you know. Like, Asimo, I'm sorry if I have hurt your feelings. I know you can't feel anything yet, but I'm sure in the future they'll make sure that you have human emotions.
I think it's going to suck because back then they had to do it mechanically. And that made the robot look alive. It was puppeteering, and kids love puppets.
Oh, puppets were big.
Yeah, they're going to do CGI now. And it's as advanced as CGI is, we accept it as part of reality because we're capable of making that suspension of disbelief, but it hasn't reached that point yet where I would confuse it with anything real.
Especially when it's juxtaposed against something that is.
Exactly.
It becomes very apparent that it's computer generated.
And that will make number 5, the robot, feel less alive when the whole point of the story is for you to believe that his life has value.
Exactly.
And that's going to play against the movie throughout the entire picture.
Yeah. So Ghostbusters.
Yeah, the old crew teaming up with a new team is essentially the premise of Ghostbusters 3. I think the passing of the torch is a good idea. It allows you to get the nostalgia factor and also make the franchise more viable and bring in something new. Because the second Ghostbusters was just a repeat of the first one.
Yeah.
This guarantees us that the plot is going to be different.
Exactly.
The only question I'm wondering is whether the new team is going to include Zac Efron.
I think on that note, we'll look at Clash of the Titans.
What, Zac Efron is in that too?
I think he has to be British, unfortunately, to qualify.
Oh well.
You might get Ben Barnes, but like the original, it's got like a star-studded cast. So you've got people like Liam Neeson already slated to play Zeus.
Cool.
And Ralph Fiennes is Hades.
Clash of the Titans was a blatant rip-off of Star Wars. So I'm wondering, is the remake going to be a blatant rip-off of the prequels?
I can't confirm or deny.
Are they going to have a little mechanical owl R2-D2 guy? Except now he's going to be Jar Jar.
Who knows what these people will do?
Oh, look, if they go into a more legitimate direction than the original, it could be pretty cool. Greek mythology is cool. You don't need to remove it to tell a good, gripping story. Take that, Troy.
Grayskull, the Masters of the Universe.
Oh, it's called Grayskull?
Yeah, that's the name I was getting.
Look, it was a show when we were growing up, a big popular cartoon by Filmation with like one animation cell, if I remember correctly. Well, if you feel that that's something you desperately want to see as a 30-year-old to relive your youth, what can I say? Oh, yeah, I know. Why?
The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Which actually bled a little bit into the 90s.
Yeah, that's true, and it's coming back.
They're turtles who do martial arts and eat pizza. Like, what in God's name makes that compelling? And they're named after Renaissance painters.
Yeah, never quite understood that. Okay, so Splinter had an appreciation of the fine arts.
And it was huge when we were kids.
God!
Huge.
The video games?
The cross-promotion with Pizza Hut, the movies, Vanilla Ice got in there.
Exactly.
Then it died down because we grew up. And here's the thing. It came back again in like the late 90s. And it was as huge. We didn't feel it as much because we're adults.
Yeah.
But I know younger kids are like, Ninja Turtles. And now they're coming back again. It's like, how many times can you milk the world's stupidest concept?
Apparently, forever. A never-ending story.
I thought they already made a remake. It was called Dungeons and Dragons. I really enjoyed the never-ending story as a child. Let's avoid the 2 unnecessary sequels that follow the original, please.
Yeah, I don't understand why they couldn't just have it as one film. It seems like there really isn't this impetus towards having serialization when I think it's completely unnecessary. If you've got one good film with a good story that's compelling and entertaining and with, memorable characters, there's really no reason to go further unless you really feel there is another story to tell. It's not just about making money.
Well, that's the thing though. The problem is that sequels make a lot more money than the original films.
Yeah, see, I want people to have integrity. It's like, just stop. If you
It is integrity. The more money you make, the more people you can employ. You're fighting a recession.
I guess.
Yeah.
I do like the idea of people being employed. On the other hand, I'm like, oh, but this is an inferior product. But the good thing is it didn't overshadow the original. There's still a lot of people who love the original film.
Well, bad sequels never do. A lot of people go like, the sequel is awful, they ruined the original. It's like, how?
Yeah, because you can still go back and see it.
Yeah.
It wasn't like burned in some gigantic bonfire. It's like, we have sequels now, so we don't need that one.
Yeah. Actually, I feel that way about remakes in general. Like, a lot of people hate remakes. It's like, it never captures the spirit of the original. It's like, of course not.
Well,
and
yeah.
second, it's like, it's going to ruin the original. How? If anything, it's going to help the original gain some attention.
Well, that's exactly it. If it was underappreciated the first time around, people are going to go back, look at it, and be like, wow, this is actually something that's worthwhile watching.
Absolutely. Which begs the question of, what's the deal with this 80s comeback?
I just feel like we've gotten into this bizarre cycle where we keep rehashing these never-ending sequels and trilogies. We delve through old television series, video games, comics and graphic novels, and we keep trying to bring them to the big screen without creating any sort of strong storyline or, developing any characters. And it seems like, is the film industry really that bereft of new ideas that they feel like they need to delve back into the past?
Is that the reason, though?
I feel like we're kind of torn at this point between a lot of people trying to remember what would have been their youth and this sort of trend among a younger generation for kind of like a taste for things retro, and thinking, well, if you've got this older generation who might be enticed for the reasons of nostalgia, and then this younger generation who didn't actually experience it but are the children of these people, this is like a whole new audience that you can exploit using the same old material, and you're hoping it'll still satisfy your bottom line.
I think that's a marvelous point. I didn't think of it at all that way. Because the way I saw it, it was really just kids from the 80s like ourselves trying to buy back their youth.
Yeah.
But you're right about if you haven't experienced it, it is a whole new universe of goofy, weird, retro stuff. Because the 80s were goofier and weirder and more alien when you look at it.
It's a weird sort of schizophrenic world. But I mean, if you're thinking in terms of just finances, the 80s too was also very much aware of making money. And I mean, this is where you really start to see a lot of blockbusters, deliberate campaigning to bring people in, especially youth audiences, due to the success of Star Wars in the late 70s.
Yeah.
Now you had this whole new segment that you could exploit. And they were making up probably one of the largest segments of the cinema-going public. So, of course, you got to take advantage of that. And the 80s had proven profitable and marketable successes, which I guess for a lot of studios, that's very enticing. If they feel like they could capture that same sort of momentum that they had then and bring it back, I guess I see no reason why not to do that.
Yeah, you get two audiences out of it. It is pretty... I just, for people our age, I find it sad. And I include myself because I will go see G.I. Joe. I find it sad because can't we celebrate the present instead of looking back?
No, I completely agree with that. It's not that I have any problem with remaking or revamping a franchise, but for me it's a problem with cultural relevancy. And as became very apparent as we were going through that list of franchises making a comeback, a lot of them don't have any relevance to what's taking place right now. And that for me is a major problem. And to be honest, for people who are looking to relive their youth, I think it'll come as a very big disappointment.
I guess this does not lead us at all into the electric boogaloo.
Yeah, exactly.
But we're going to go there anyway.
Yeah.
There you go. This, ladies and gentlemen, is when we take a franchise that nobody wants to see a sequel to and try to conceive a sequel for it because no one demanded it. This one's kind of fun because we decided to take Rambo, like the latest Rambo movie. But here's the thing, Sylvester Stallone has announced that there will probably be a sequel to it, which strikes me as so wrong.
Well, not even just a sequel to it, but another sequel, he says, is in the works following that sequel. So
like he's gonna make a Rambo trilogy now?
Yeah, it's really, I was like, wow, really? I thought that's where you were gonna end it, which would have been fine.
Yeah.
It was the last shot, if you haven't seen the film, I felt like that was a nice close. For me, I assumed that was the closure that he was getting as a character.
It's true.
Yeah.
Don't spoil it. Because is it important? Like, is it really a spoiler?
No, it's not it's not important to the plot at all. It's just that final shot.
Yeah, no, that's it. So we might as well spoil it.
Yeah.
He goes back to his father's farm.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, oh, Rambo's coming home.
Yeah, and that seemed in keeping.
Although, you know what's funny about that?
What?
He goes to see his father, right?
Mhm.
Considering Rambo's age, that makes his father somewhere in his 90s.
Yeah.
And he lives in a modest farm that's apparently still active from the looks of it.
Yeah.
So he's either really healthy for his age, which is entirely possible.
Yeah.
Or, more likely, he's a zombie. So I guess what we can look forward to with the Rambo 2 and 3 is Rambo versus the zombies.
Well, it would give him a reason to shoot stuff again.
Yeah. The other thing I wonder about for a Rambo sequel is the naming sequence, because the Rambo series has the weirdest numbering. Because the first one is First Blood, and then the second one is Rambo First Blood 2. And then the third one is Rambo 3, no mention of First Blood at all. And then the last one was Rambo. So I was thinking, I was like, okay, let's do a sequel to that. And the only name that made sense to me is kind of like, okay, well, we're going to go the Final Destination way, where it's like Final Destination, Final Destination 2, Final Destination 3, and then the last one, The Final Destination. I know. It's just really confusing. So I guess, like, the only logical way of naming the last Rambo movie is going to be The First Blood, Rambo Part 2, First Blood 5. You know what, I've been rambling on. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so having returned to the United States and his roots, John Rambo attempts to settle down to a quiet rural farm life. However, he soon finds his tranquility disturbed by the recent incursions of multinational agricultural and biotechnology giant Monsanto, which has taken to dumping metal-laden waste into local streams that serve to irrigate his and neighboring farms.
Wait, what?
Try to stick with me. I know, it was a mouthful. As locals grow increasingly ill due to the contamination of their water supply, a committee is formed to persuade Rambo, because they're familiar with his background, to aid the community in bringing the company to justice. Now, obviously, Rambo is moved by their plight, and he decides to take on the corporate monolith the only way he knows how, because when John Rambo goes green, he goes gorilla green.
Go on.
That was it. It was all geared to that one line.
Alright, so August starts Blast from the Past Month. The next 2 episodes going to be 80s nostalgia and 90s nostalgia. So, see you next time.
Right on.
Are you done?
Yeah.